Good day, everyone. I'm Gus, the founder of Onebowlofrice. Today, I would like to share with you a great story that changed the lives of many unfortunate children in Vietnam. They are the children that has been exposed to crime, kidnapping, sold as prostitutes, children from very poor families fighting for their future. Many of us living in the first world country might not be aware that today, in 2021, this problem of children illegal trafficking still happen. Today, I'm so lucky that I'm able to interview Michael Brosowski, the founder and the CEO of Bluedragon, the nonprofit organization based in Hanoi, Vietnam, with the clear purpose of caring Vietnamese children and families in crisis while creating long-term change for a better world. Good day, Michael. How are you?
Hey, Gus, I'm great. Thank you so much.
I'm so thankful that you donating your time today. I have been searching for your story. You are a clear one bowl of rice story that changing the world. Would you mind to share a little bit about yourself before we go to the for the next 1 hour capturing your story?
Sure. I'm an Aussie who has lived in Vietnam for 20 years. I was born in Sydney, and I grew up there in a very industrial part of the city until I was about 12. When I lived in the countryside, we moved to a farm in the northwest of New South Wales. Went on to become a school teacher, and it had been my dream as a child to be a school teacher, but I only lasted for 4 years before I left that, and I went back to further study and working in a university, and at that time decided what I really wanted to do was move to Vietnam. So I've been here ever since. I came here with not much idea of what I would do, but I think I found my purpose now.
And Michael, why you choose this path? Why Vietnam? Why Vietnam?
Well, Vietnam was a conscious decision. Uh, Starting Bluedragon maybe was less so of a conscious decision. It's something that more just happened. Um, I When I was in high school, I was in a country high school, and and I was the most foreign person in that school because of my surname. My father's a German immigrant to Australia. I don't speak a word of German, by the way, but I was the foreigner. And then one day, just out of the blue, a whole group of Vietnamese refugee children turned up at this country high school. They could barely speak a word of English. They had been the classic boat people. They'd fled southern Vietnam on boats, been in camps in Malaysia, and ended up in this country town where I was. And so they they struck me like their stories of being attacked by pirates, of surviving the most incredible thing. They were younger than me, and they had these incredible stories. And so I I did what I could do, which was to teach them some English to help them out. And you know what? It also helped me because I'm not much of a sportsman, Gus, and that's an embarrassing thing for an Australian. So I could go to my teachers and say, look, I can't participate in sport this week because I'm helping these Vietnamese kids to learn English. And they accepted that. And so that I got to know these young Vietnamese people. That inspired me to become an ESL teacher. And years later I ended up in southwestern Sydney teaching ESL in a high school. And most of my students were Vietnamese. And so that very first time that I had an opportunity to travel overseas, I thought, well, I have to go to Vietnam. Partly because it was very cheap. And, you know, the old Southeast Asia on a shoestring from the old Lonely Planet days. Um, and I went to Thailand, and I really enjoyed Thailand. And then I came into Vietnam and I was hooked. It's such a dynamic country, such an amazing place. And I was only here for, I don't know, 10 days or something. And I just couldn't get enough of it. The next time I had a holiday, I came back and back and back and back until I thought it's got to be cheaper just to live there. than to keep flying over every time I have a holiday. And so I came here, like I say, I didn't know what I was going to do here, but I knew that I wanted to be here.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. I think if I'm you, I will choose Vietnam as well because I like few of Vietnamese dishes from the Vietnamese noodle, pho, and also banh mi. That's
Yeah,
French bread with a lot of meat inside it. Oh, I love it, and I think the
yeah.
best banh mi is actually available in Melbourne today. Now, Michael, interesting just looking at it from your quick life story, and obviously it's very deep when you connected to the Bluedragon. For the audience that have no real understanding about Bluedragon, please visit their website, www.bluedragon.org, to understand what this non-profit organization led by Michael actually do. Now, why then you arrive in Vietnam, understand why you love Vietnam, but then why Bluedragons? Do you mind to just give a quick snapshot? Why Bluedragon? What's the start of it before you decided this life-changing organization?
Well, I ended up teaching in a University of Economics in Ho Chi Minh City. Look, I had a great job. It was the easiest job I've ever had, honestly. I had like 12 students and I was their English teacher. It was great. They were smart and bright young people. I was living the dream. I'd go, on the weekends, I'd go off up the central coast of Vietnam to the beaches, and I had no responsibility. And then one day I got transferred to Hanoi, which is where I am now. Uh, and here there were 80 students that I had to teach, and I'd never been to Hanoi before, even though I knew Vietnam very well. I'd never been to the north, and I didn't like Hanoi, not one bit. All I could think was, I've got to get back to Ho Chi Minh City, back to the south. The culture between the two cities now is a bit more similar, but then it was very stark. Hanoi was still very, very conservative, um, and, and and I just wasn't used to it. And so I had no intention of staying here. So while I was teaching at this university, I didn't do all the things you normally do, right? I didn't go and rent a house. I didn't try to make friends, thinking I'm going to be here for a long time. I was going to be here for 3 months. That was it. And what did I do on the weekends and in my spare time? Well, walk along the street and sit down for a coffee, for a bang mi, for some noodles. And kids would come by, shoe shine boys mostly, or kids selling something. And sometimes women would come by selling fruit from a basket on their shoulder. And I would think these kids are really interesting. And, going back to when I was in high school, well, I did the same thing. I said, sit down, I'll teach you some English. And I started getting to know these kids. Then I'd go to university the next day and I'd be sharing these stories with my class. Now, these were master's students, master's level. So they were young adults. They weren't kids, And some of them would come to me afterwards and say, this is amazing. We want to help as well. And so we started these regular classes, English, and someone would come along and say, I can teach mathematics. Someone else could teach art. And next thing we had these classes running and kids were coming all the time. And finally, there was this realization of, what are we going to do? What have we started? How am I going to get out of this, right? And go back to Ho Chi Minh City? And I realized, well, I can't. And in fact, what I did, and I haven't told many people this, Gus, but one of the first things that I did was I got on the telephone. There wasn't a lot of email at that time, right? This is early 2000s in Vietnam. I got on the telephone to other charities saying, hey, look, there's this problem in Hanoi. What do you think? Could you come and start something here to help these kids? Now, in hindsight, one by one, they would say, look, I'm sorry, but we can't. I now get those calls myself. Somebody will say, hey, I'm in this other town and there's this problem. What I realized, when I look back on that, is I was ringing someone saying, hey, there's a problem here that I'm concerned about, and I think you should fix it. And they couldn't. And finally, it dawned on me, I'm the one worried about it. I'm here. I know these kids. This is my responsibility. And so among these university students and I, we said, okay, let's let's do something proper. Let's set up an organization so that we can do something on a sustainable basis, not just, activities after hours. That's how Bluedragon began.
Wow, that's just such an interesting story. Just even listening to that, what comes to my mind is just like anything, your passion, not necessarily other people's passion.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And my question is, surely in 2 decades, 20 years running this organization from a very humble starting like that, where people will, I'm sure, and I could be wrong here, but correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure there will be a lot of people that laugh on you. There will be a lot of charity that you rang and thinking, well, Michael, that's good, but we got 100 priorities from, from every problem that happened in the world that they want to solve as well. How do you sustain your passion? How do you, like, this is, we're talking 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
do you sustain that?
Look, that it is such a good question. We could spend a whole hour on that, Gus. And to be really honest, there have been times when I have been on the verge of giving up and like writing the email to my board in Australia or to my colleagues here saying, I can't keep going now. I have been there a couple of times, partly because of me taking the wrong approaches or not getting the help that I needed. And I think that now I can actually give, a better answer, not only of what I do, but also what I should have been doing for 20 years. First of all, it's not about me. Bluedragon isn't me. It's about a team of people. And you have to work like a team. There's nothing wrong with me as the founder, and now I'm a co-CEO, by the way. So there are two of us CEOs. So, the emphasis is on the team.
Wow.
There's nothing wrong with me feeling absolutely terrible and thinking I've stuffed up or I've actually hit a problem that I can't solve. It's about communicating, reaching out and talking to people and getting help. And especially as Bluedragon has grown, we all have that experience at times. You've got to give yourself the permission to fail and work with that team. One of the hardest times in all of this, when I really thought I was at the end, was a time when we came across a problem that I didn't think we could solve. Now, it was quite a dark issue. It was a matter about here in Vietnam, until a few years ago, Vietnamese law didn't recognize that males could be the victim of sexual abuse. So females
Wow.
could be, and it was just in the wording of the law. It wasn't that people didn't realize it, although there were, as in Australia, there certainly were a lot of people who thought, no, that doesn't happen to boys. But just by the way the law was written, when a boy was sexually abused, it wasn't clear that they could be a victim of a crime. And we, in our street outreach work, we were coming across boys daily who were disclosing, and we knew who the offenders were. Some of them were foreign men, some of them were Vietnamese men. And no matter what we did, we couldn't stop it. And some of those men knew that we couldn't. And actually, they would talk to the kids about us. They would say, Bluedragon can't help you. Michael can't help you. They would even try sending their pimps to meet our kids out on the street or in internet cafes and try to lure them away from us. And this just went on for a couple of years. Now, by the way, that law eventually changed, and we were able to work with the government. Men now who do that are in prison. There are some prominent people who ended up being arrested. But during that time, my biggest mistake was I thought, I'm going to protect my staff and my organization from this. I'm going to keep this problem to a small team of people, so like 4 people in Bluedragon, because I thought, knowing this, it was dark stuff. It would bring the organization down. It would hurt. So, and also there were risks of information leaking out. So most of the staff didn't know what I and this little team were doing. They didn't know what we were going through. So they couldn't support us. and it led to these divisions in Bluedragon of people thinking, well, Michael's got this secret project going on, you know, and it wasn't meant to be a secret project. I thought I was doing the right thing. And I really learned a big lesson then. You bring the whole team in, you get support, you talk to people, you don't exclude, you don't divide. And now, sure, we face terrible decisions all the time. We have to make tough choices, but I never feel alone. And that's the world of difference, Gus.
Wow, that's amazing, Michael. You know, when we talk about organization, I'm sure few out there will think that commercial organization are different to non-profit organization. Commercial, I'm running a commercial organization myself. Yet when I learn about what you told us before, you know, the need of actually, it's okay for us to make mistake. It's okay to be transparent and get help. It's okay, you know, unable to resolve things because we are a team. If we implement that kind of culture, and if the leaders of any organization, whether it's non-profit, profit organization, implement that kind of behavior, the transparent behavior, putting the hand up when you are not strong, it's unbelievable. And I think listening to your story, you know, and I can't help myself trying to compare my leadership when you explaining things just for me to understand. I can say honestly, you will run a much harder position because the problem that you solve are emotionally connected problem. Means
Mm,
that you know, if people running a business, I'm just putting an example, selling a product, that emotional problem will happen when the product fails. You know, yes, we get a call from a client when the product is not working well, or I got a team that's complained because our stock not available. But your organization dealing with crimes, dealing with people that can say hello today and die tomorrow, not to mention that while you're doing all this, your own safety, your team safety. You know, I went to your website and you said we cannot share the address because, you know, we can't have people knocking our doors and you
yeah.
know, hold us, you know, because we're dealing with criminals. I mean, I'm just, how do you, like, wow, it just like, God.
It's from, you know, from our side, it doesn't feel like that. This is normal for us. This is how it's developed and evolved over the years. But yes, when you step out and look in, some of these things look quite unusual in a business sense.
Yeah.
But you know, in some ways, they're very similar. You in any company, you deal with risk management. We deal with risk management. It's just different risks, right?
Yes, yes. Michael, you know, I'm sure the audience, you know, we talk about the start of you coming to Vietnam. You know, we talk about the reason why Bluedragon initially, you know, it's from teaching unfortunate children to be able to learn English, math. You know, up to that point, I can understand that. But then it grow and grow and grow, and now it's actually dealing with saving the life of children. Do you mind to share with the audience couple of story, like real story of the magnitude of the problems and what it
Yeah,
really mean when you save those children from these crimes?
yeah. Well, it's worth explaining that we kind of deal with two major issues in our work. One, we started out helping street children in Hanoi, and we still do that. We have we have teams who go out every day, and I used to be the one going out on the street. I don't anymore. Now we have people in Bluedragon who are far better than I ever was, who do that. And you know, they go out at nighttime. Nighttime is the prime time. They go to bridges, they go to parks, to abandoned industrial sites, and they look for children who are sleeping rough. And these kids, very often they've come to the city from country areas where they're living in poverty. They might be running away from abuse or neglect, or they might have come to the city because their family is so poor they need to make money. And you know, everyone thinks you go to the city, the streets are paved with gold, everyone's rich. it'll be easy. And these kids, wow, they end up in these terrible, terrible positions, and predators go out looking for them to recruit them to gangs or to abuse them. Um, and you know, those kids, part of our objective there is to get them as quickly as we can. Now, they don't always come with us straight away. They don't trust us, right? Why should they trust
Yeah.
some man and woman from Bluedragon turning up any
Yeah.
more than they would trust anyone else? But we've got to get to them so they know there's help there. Because if we don't, if they're in Hanoi for a few days, now they're hungry, they have no money, maybe they've been robbed. Someone comes along and says, why don't you come back to my room for tonight and I'll give you some money? This kid doesn't want to do that, doesn't trust this person. Maybe they know that they're going to be sexually abused, but thinks it's that or starve to death. That's not a choice. And so we aim to meet every street child as soon as they get to the city. And you know, it's that critical. If we decide let's take next week off, what will happen to those kids in that time? It's quite a frightening thought. The other part of our work is actually what we're better known for around the world, which is to do with our work regarding human trafficking. So we started with that, helping children trafficked within Vietnam. They were being taken from country areas, and they were being promised education and training and pathways to employment. And they were just being put in sweatshops, in garment factories, like 18 hours a day kind of thing. It basically doesn't happen anymore. We put a stop to it by attacking this problem for 10 years. It was a 10-year project to put a dent in that. But then along the way, we also started dealing with cases of mostly girls and women being trafficked from Vietnam to China, and now these days to Myanmar as well, and being sold as brides or into brothels. And they go thinking that they're traveling with a friend, or they might think that they're traveling for a job in China, because a lot of Vietnamese people do go to China for employment. And so they, you know, these traffickers set up a deception. It's not like a grab them off the street and drag them into China. They may walk into China together, and then the person realizes, I've been tricked. And we get calls for help, and we send people to go and find them and rescue them out of that situation. Not smash and grab. We're not Batman. You know, we're not swinging in on a rope and beating up the bad guys. Our specialty, Gus, is running. We find a way to get to that person, get them in a car, and race back to Vietnam.
So that must be, Michael, that must be, you know, I can't picture it. I mean, I can picture it from the movie, but, you know, the way you mention it like that. So you actually putting the life of yourself and your team as well throughout that, recapturing the people, the children in need, you know, in that situation, to your car and run. So
Yeah.
that must be a, you know.
Well, it's kind of funny. The first rescues that we did, I mean, the very first one, my staff ended up in a Chinese military camp under arrest. That was terrifying, you know, and that was after they escaped from the traffickers who were attacking them. That I can smile about it because it was like 15 years ago. We weren't smiling at the time. But now, now we actually know what we're doing. Now we have processes and systems, and I mean, it is still dangerous, but we take every step to reduce that danger to as close to zero as possible. And I can't emphasize that enough. We're in it for the long haul. We do want to be in a point one day where there's no one left to rescue, where trafficking has stopped, where people are safe. So we're doing more than rescue. The rescue is one part of it, but obviously a significant part. And my job, maybe the most important thing I do, is make sure my people are safe. We've got to do that next rescue tomorrow as well. we have to keep going, and so we have to be 100% safe.
And Michael, just for us, the audience, what is the magnitude of the problem in numbers, like including the success and the impact? You know, I mean, if we go to your website, there is thousands of children being saved, but do you mind to just share the high level numbers so we understand the problem? Because I really think that what you guys doing are great for the world, but what is the magnitude of this, from the success, from the requirement, from the logistic, from whatever that you might be able to share with us?
So you've asked a simple question. I'm going to give you a complex answer. We work in a field where a lot of this is not known. There are some numbers here and there about how many people have been trafficked. No one can really verify them. So I guess the most commonly known number is that it's estimated that there are 42 million people in our world in slavery. 42 million people. That number is about as reliable as we can get, and it's still largely guesswork. But guesswork based on some reasonable evidence. In Vietnam, there's just no clear idea. There are official numbers, but the official numbers can't tell the whole story. And let me explain why. Your sister goes missing. One day she doesn't come home. You live up in the mountains in a straw hut in a tiny village. Do you even report that to the police? And what do you report? You don't know if she's been trafficked or not. Maybe she actually just got a job somewhere and hasn't come home. And then maybe she never returns, or maybe she comes back 2 years later. And maybe she doesn't want to say what happened. Maybe her experience was so traumatic, she doesn't want to go down to the police and say, hey, I was trafficked. So there are all these issues with reporting statistics, with collecting it. What we do know, over the years, Bluedragon has directly rescued 1,000 people from slavery. Wow. So people in factories, people in brothels, people in forced marriages. We know that right now there's rumor, there's anecdote that just in northern Myanmar alone, there are 2,000 Vietnamese women who have been trafficked in recent times, like in the last couple of years. In China, we just have no idea how many there are. And then there's this whole issue. Sometimes you hear about Vietnamese people being trafficked into Europe and the UK. Well, actually, that begins as smuggling. Very, very often, those Vietnamese people are saying, I want to go to the UK illegally. I want to go. I can't get there legally. I would go legally if I could. I can't. I hear that there's great opportunity there. I'm going to pay someone money to get me there. Once they are there, well, you know what? You're here illegally. Now you're going to do what I tell you, or else you're out and you owe me money and the police are going to arrest you. And so there's this blurry line between the smuggling and trafficking. So this is the long answer to your short question. I don't know. But what we do know is that there are indicators that we can look at. We can look at how many kids are dropping out of school, how many people are missing from villages. Now, no one actually has collected all of those indicators because they would point you to the real magnitude. And now Bluedragon is starting on that. We're starting to try to gauge in certain areas and then extrapolate. It's an interesting problem. We want to understand more so that we can answer that question more clearly, Gus. I'll get back to you one day.
Wow, that's amazing. And how about stories where the children that you saved from 20 years ago today become a story that you can share? Do you have any few example of children that you saved 20 years ago and now having a life that, can be shared?
Well, one of our senior staff in Bluedragon was a street kid. And one of the first street kids, he joined our English class back when that was the only thing we had. He's a young man named V, and he now leads that whole program that does all of that street outreach work. They have shelters where kids live in emergency situations. They have a drop-in center. In fact, his program could be its own organization. It's actually a substantial program. And yeah, he came to Hanoi to shine shoes. He came with his mum, or his mother was also working in Hanoi, working on the streets. And a fascinating story, even with her. She was a school teacher, but at that time, Vietnam was so poor. School teachers were paid so little that it was more worthwhile for her to quit being a school teacher and go to the city and collect scrap on the streets. Now that has improved, but it shows you the level of poverty. And so V also, he was a very bright kid, but what do bright boys do in class when they're not challenged? They muck up, right? And then they get labeled, you're the stupid one, you're the bad one.
Yes.
There were 40 kids in his class, 40 children in the classroom, one teacher out the front. He was bored out of his brain. He thought, I'm going to kind of do the same thing that my mother did. I'm going to leave this and I'm going to go to the city and work. And he was here. He was sending money back to his family. So at the time that I met him, he was just trying to earn money. He was 14 or 15. Now he's in his early 30s. He's got a family of his own, 2 kids, and he's a very senior manager. And he's traveled the world as well, speaking about Bluedragon.
Wow.
Inspiring guy. There are girls and women who we've rescued from trafficking, and often, by the way, they don't necessarily want their story to be told.
Yeah.
So it's actually harder for me sometimes to tell their stories.
The stories, yeah.
But just recently there's a young woman who gave us permission to share her story. We rescued her 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago, from one of the sweatshops. She was one of the first kids we rescued from this one really remote area of Vietnam. And the traffickers were having a field day there. We got called 10 years ago to go up to this area where there were more than 20 children missing from a village, more than 20 children. And this one particular girl, I'll call her Thuyen, she was 13. Her family was just in such poverty, and these traffickers came along saying, we can help you. Let your kids come with us. They'll learn a skill. They'll learn to be a tailor, and tailors make great money. Your kids are going to be so rich in the future. They said they were taking the kids to Hanoi, and Hanoi is about a 13-hour drive from their village. They took them to Ho Chi Minh City, which is like a 3-day drive. It's the other end of the country. You couldn't be much further from their village and still be in Vietnam. And put Thuyen and these kids to work as slave labor. And anyway, we found Thuyen and her friends. It was a significant rescue operation. And Thuyen went back, got her back to school, and she went right through, graduated from grade 12. And now she works as a security guard here in Hanoi. And I love that her job now is protecting people. Her job is stopping the bad guys, right? And that's what she wishes someone had done for her. And now she's doing it for others. Beautiful story, and a wonderful young woman, 23 years old now, of course.
I can listen to this kind of story for hours, right? Like, because it's real, it make an impact that is real. There's a lot of sacrifices that coming to the story. It's just beautiful story. I went to your website last night, and I saw in one of your blog posts that I think, I can't remember, I remember the picture. There's about 6 criminals in the courtroom that finally go to prison because of what you do. Obviously, you are being a non-profit organization. You need funds to actually combat these criminals. And how do you bring this story to the world, though? Like, I'm still trying to understand your challenges, because if I'm moving the topic from all this story and just focus on your organization, um, because your organization not different to mine. We are running organization.
Yep.
We need some money to run the organization, and then not only that, you need some money to save the children. How do you translate the journey to the people that invest to help you out? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that courtroom will cost money, but the people that donating money might not really understand why you need the money in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. I guess the difference there between a non-profit business and a for-profit business is that you will offer a service or a product, and the more of those you sell, the more money you have. For
Yes.
a non-profit, the more work my staff do out in the field does not translate at all to more money. They could be doing 24 hours of work every day of the week. That doesn't generate $1. And so there's a disconnect between the actual work that we do and the income that we receive. Now, we're all here in Vietnam, and that's a really interesting challenge. We don't have an office in any other country. We have boards in other countries, in Australia, in Germany, in the UK, the USA, New Zealand. They're volunteer boards. No one's getting paid, and they help us with fundraising. But actually, we manage all of our communications and fundraising centrally here from Vietnam. It's a team of Vietnamese people, mostly young people, bright young people. My goodness, this generation is incredible, which in itself, by the way, raises all sorts of challenges, because the team that raises our money are people who actually want to go off and change the world themselves, and study abroad and start their own organization. So it's very dynamic. But what we have to do is to tell the story focused not on the activities. I could just spend 1 hour listing the activities that we do. We play football, we have shelters, we have a drop-in center, but focusing on the purpose and the vision behind it all, and sharing stories that share that vision. Because a lot of people, Gus, and I think that you're one of them, a lot of people look at what we do, and part of them says, I wish I could do that. Now, it's not that you can't. If I can do it, Gus, you can do it.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I was lucky. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I didn't own anything that I had to worry about. I kind of had nothing to lose, right? So I could start Bluedragon. A lot of people looking at our work can't do that. They have companies, they have families and commitments. Well, the one thing they can do is donate. And by the way, in my work, yeah, I face risk and hardship and so on. I also have incredible gratification of seeing the people I help. People who donate don't even have that. And so in my mind, that act of donating, whether it's to Bluedragon or to any charity, is one of the most selfless things you can do. You're giving money so that someone you'll never meet has a better life. That blows my mind. And so we owe it to our donors and to the world to share the stories. And we do that through email, through social media. Out of COVID times, we try to travel, and meet in person. I think after COVID, we'll be using Zoom a lot more, and maybe traveling a bit less. But that human connection, talking to people, telling them you donated, and because of that, this happened. It's an obligation that we have, and it's also a huge privilege to share those stories.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, I want to go in detail on these questions. And I want to make sure that I don't put this statement wrongly as well, because I think what you guys doing are very, very important. But at the world that we're living today, we have 100,000 millions problem, 100,000 millions charity for a good cause.
Mm-hmm.
You are one of them, one out of many. You are one grain of rice in
Yep.
the bowl of rice, because I truly believe people that doing things like this is reflect the bowl of rice. Right? Now, what are your business strategy to capture people around the world to put more focus in what you guys doing instead of other things? I really hope for the audience to understand. I'm not trying to say that other initiatives are less or more. I think if anything that we do for others are important. My question to your organization is, what are some of the strategy that you're doing to make this Bluedragon a sustainable business, non-profit business for years to come?
Some of the best advice I've ever had on strategy is that you've got to have a strategy that no one else could copy. It's got to be your own strategy. Now, strategy is something that evolves, right? It's not.
Yeah.
We always talk about having a strategic planning meeting where you sit down and write the strategy. Actually, if anything, those meetings, which I'm not a huge fan of, but if anything, those meetings at best are descriptive rather than actual planning. Our strategy over the years has become something that actually is complex, and I've had feedback of people saying you shouldn't make it so complex, but I think the complexity is the success. It's a very intertwined strategy. So today, so far, we've talked about we're going and rescuing people. We're going out at night on the street. We're changing laws. We're going to court. We have shelters. We have drop-in centers. All of this, these are many different parts of the puzzle. And I think of it as a stream. Some people say you should go upstream. So that means preventing trafficking, changing the laws. Other people work downstream, so helping the victims, providing aftercare. We deal with the whole stream. We deal with all of that. And I think of it as an intertwined rope. All of the parts are essential. How do we change the law? How do we work with the government on improving policy if we're not out on the street and out in the field? How do we win the trust of the government that they would even listen to us? So right now there's a process underway to revise the country's anti-trafficking law, and Bluedragon is working with the government on that. Why have they let us in to work with them on that? Well, because we're out there rescuing people. Then we're up in the mountains and we're down in the deltas, visiting families. We're providing psychological counseling and legal advocacy. We know what we're talking about. And so our strategy is quite remarkable. And it is complex. So some people say, well, why don't you just focus on shelter or just do rescue? And for me, it's indivisible. It wouldn't make sense to break it up. If we focus just on rescue, for example, well, we'll be doing rescue forever because then there's no strategy to actually end human trafficking. The problem is always there. We'll always have to rescue. Now, that one advantage of this, by the way, is, Gus, you might be thinking, I love your rescue work. I'm not interested in your law reform work, but that's okay. There's something that you can support. Other people love our work because they can see, I love your street outreach work, but more than that, I love that you're changing the law. There's a bigger picture. It's not just we're going to send kids to school, we're going to give scholarships, which we do, but there's a higher purpose that it's working towards. By sending those kids to school, we're keeping them safe from trafficking while we help their entire community build a resilience to trafficking. So there's a connection. And that strategy sets us apart, I think, from a lot of organizations. We have a really long-term view. So, it took us 10 years to end that trafficking of children to sweatshops. We're now looking at this issue of girls and women being trafficked into the sex industry. And we're asking ourselves, could we end that? If we could end one kind of trafficking in Vietnam, why can't we end another? And we're actually getting really serious about this. We're starting to formulate in our mind what it would look like. And again, we're talking at least 10 years to have a noticeable impact. So we're in it for the long haul. It's not like we're going to do this for 2 years and then move on. And all of that, I think, there's something in there that does attract people. And by the way, if what Bluedragon does is not for you, if you're not interested, or if you think, and some people, by the way, do think you shouldn't rescue. That's not what NGOs should do, or it's not empowering, or whatever. Go and donate to someone else. That's okay, but do something. Don't say I'm not going to donate to Bluedragon, and I'm not going to donate to anyone. Everyone in this world has a responsibility. I happen to think Bluedragon's great, but you know what? There are other great organizations as well. I'll accept that. Support someone.
Well, that's just powerful. You know, I always love the concept of infinite mindset. Infinite. You know, even when you describe your strategy, where you say strategy can change, but we are here for a long haul.
Absolutely. If your strategy doesn't change, you're not doing it right. Strategy is an evolution. Our strategy now, 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, we would never have sat down and wrote this. But it has evolved. You know, opportunities come along. And this is a challenge. It's for business and for Bluedragon. When, you know, I told you that story about a girl we rescued 10 years ago. Now, let me tell you something else. When we got that call, and it was a policeman who called us, by the way, this incredible policeman, lovely guy. He was in this village and he saw this problem and he thought, oh, goodness, more than 20 kids are missing. What am I going to do about this? He knew that we'd been involved in other parts of the country doing it. So he rang us and said, look, could you come up here and have a look at this with us? Which is incredibly open-minded of him, to invite us in like that. My staff rang me and said, hey, Michael, we've had this call. And I said, no, I don't think we should do this. We're already stretched. We've never been to that province before. It's a province up in the northwest corner of the country. We don't know anything about it. We're stretched. We don't have the money. I don't think we should do it. My staff really disagreed with me and told me that. And you know, they had this passion saying, but we can. We know how to find these kids. We've done it before. And there are kids missing. Michael, we have to do something. And I relented. But now every business faces that choice, right? An opportunity comes along. Sometimes you do have to say no. You know, we can't do everything. And we do sometimes get asked to take on like new initiatives or things that just don't fit with our strategy. They're not going to get us closer to ending human trafficking or protecting street children. Or maybe they would, but we don't know anything about that area. And so it's not like we say yes to everything, but opportunities come along and you take them either reluctantly or you embrace them. And then they become part of your strategy. You don't take them on because it is your strategy, but they become your strategy, or they don't. There are also things we've done that we've stopped a year later because we tried it and maybe it wasn't necessary or it wasn't effective. Stop. So yeah, strategy is not a file on the shelf. It lives and it breathes everything you do.
Wow. So Michael, you have a clear purpose, which is to care Vietnamese children and families in crisis. You have a vision to create long-term change for the better world. You have a very strong strategy that you just mentioned before, which is, you know, with very strong message to every leaders tuning in today that your vision is for a long haul. Your strategy have to be agile enough because everything changed, but your
Exactly.
purpose remain. Talk to me about the culture of your organization, because I think purpose, vision, strategy required a culture within the leaders itself and also the organization to keep the whole thing work.
Yeah.
And I just interested to learn about how do you describe the culture of Blue Dragons and the culture of your team that make a
Yeah.
lot of difference in the world.
Well, you know, who was it said culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Yes,
Um, you
I
can have
yes,
you can have the best strategy,
yeah.
and I think we've got a pretty good
Peter
one.
Drucker. Peter
Yeah,
Drucker.
Peter Drucker.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's you've and you've got to have both, right? You've got to pay attention to both.
yeah.
Um, and for a very long time, I didn't pay attention to culture. I had in my mind, if someone had asked me what is Blue Dragon's culture, I would have said one thing. My staff would have looked at me like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And because of that, as we grew, we ended up hitting massive speed bumps, and things were going really badly wrong. And so this is now going back 5, 6, 7 years ago, where we were growing, we were becoming quite bureaucratic and top down, which I've never believed in. My whole view of the ownership of Blue Dragon is that it's not mine. I mean, every staff member who works for us, it's theirs. It's the kids. It's our boards. It's our donors. Like, everyone has a stake in this. Now, that doesn't mean we all equally get a vote on how it works, but the ownership is absolutely shared. And so having a top-down bureaucratic culture is opposite to what I've always believed, and yet I let that happen. Um, and it really came to a head when I actually had some very key staff, very long-term key staff, coming to me saying, "I'm not sure that Blue Dragon now is what I signed up for. I have to get permission for everything. Um, someone would need a payment of $40 for something, and they'd have to submit a request and wait 24 hours for their approval. So decision making was taken away from the front line and sent right up, and there was this chain of command, um, and so it got to a point where we put the brakes on it and said, "Stop, enough." But that happens as an organization grows, because as a founder, when it starts, you roll up your sleeves and you get your hands dirty, and we're all in it, and there's a few people around you. I used to go out on the street meeting kids, and I was also the cashier and writing reports to donors and whatever. And then as time goes by, that doesn't work. Especially as the founder, your role changes all the time, and you have to keep redefining that. When should I stop being involved in decision making? When should I hand over complete authority for this area to someone else? There's no rule book on that. And so what we decided, what we actually believed in our heart, and what we then set out to create, was a culture that was very collaborative, very flat, and very caring, and ultimately human. A human culture. So what does that mean? Well, we implemented ideas like what we call the advice process. And if you Google the advice process, there are different companies that use this in slightly different ways. Every organization, I think, defines it themselves. But what we've said there is, whenever anyone's making a decision, whether it's Michael or a social worker, a cleaner, anyone making a decision, you have to consult anyone who would be affected by your decision, or is an expert and has something to say on that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a committee meeting. It might just be like shooting someone an email saying, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? It might be having a meeting. It might be just having a conversation around the coffee machine. But it's compulsory. You can't just do things. Even I, co-CEO, founder, 20 years in the organization, I can't just make an executive decision and say, we're doing this now. I have to get feedback. Now, that's also not a democratic process. I might do something different to the feedback, but I have to explain myself, and I have to be within a certain set of boundaries, particularly our written philosophy and culture statement. And then the decision is made. People can still object, and I take that on board, but then the decision's final and we do it. So we have these processes like that. We have a co-CEO model. So there are two of us, and we sit in the same office with everyone else. We don't have our own office or our own privileges. We've worked hard, and by the way, this isn't something you do once. You don't set up culture one day, introduce it at a meeting, and then you just carry on. You've got to work at this daily. We've worked really hard to push decision making to the front lines, to help people understand what are the boundaries around which they can work, and within that they can make any decision. It's their authority. When they start hitting those boundaries, that's when you go to the manager. We've redefined managers as people who are there to support you. So normally, you think of the triangle of the hierarchy. What if you tip that on its head? What if the CEOs are there to carry you?
I love that.
And I don't have, if someone emails and says, hey, I need to see your organizational chart, I've got to email out to some of the staff saying, do we have one? What's the latest one that we have? And then it's like, okay, which one do we send this person? I actually don't. I mean, organizations are living, organic creations, right? They change, they morph all the time, and so I will, depending on who's asking, I will send that triangular. Here are the CEOs, and here are the people who report to us. But actually, the one that we work to has CEOs more at the bottom or in the middle. That's another way to look at it. That we're in the middle, information comes to us, and we're going around to everyone else, supporting people. And like I say, it's a daily effort, making sure that people are cared for and valued, also challenged, and supported to care for themselves. Okay, so I'm the co-CEO. When I'm at the office there, I know that I have staff coming through the door who have children, sometimes babies. They might live in a very small house. They might be in an unhappy marriage. They might have struggles of their own. Then they're coming to work and they're dealing with traumatic situations. They're dealing with a teenager who's been abused, or a child who's never had boundaries put on them, and now they're in our building going wild. They're dealing with a police coming around saying this kid from Bluedragon has robbed somebody. What a responsibility I have that I've invited this person to come and do this work. And not for yourself, these daily stresses that you have are not for yourself. They're for children who will grow up and not be part of your family. It's such a responsibility on me to look after everyone and understand the needs of staff across the organization.
Wow, Michael, that's just powerful. Just talking about the culture that you mentioned, and I maybe explain it in a different way, but certainly there are things in there that I really love. The responsibility of a leader as a CEO to carry. I think today organization, many get it all wrong, where the word CEO, it's become so elevated, and that's why the concept of one bowl of
Yeah.
rice really strongly aligned with me, because the ability of a bowl of rice to elevate the dishes around them, the ability of a CEO like you to elevate the team to do much bigger, greater good for other people, to make your organization sustainable, because you yourself will not be able to be sustainable if you have to carry so much responsibility when the other is just not empowered.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know, the CEO position, you make such a good point there about that position being so elevated. I've been thinking a lot about this recently. The CEO is undoubtedly an important job for lots of different reasons. But in the end, it's just a job. Now,
Exactly.
what I mean by that is, you know, you have a social worker, you have a lawyer, you have a cleaner, and you have a CEO. Um, one's not more important intrinsically than the other. Try running your organization without the cleaner coming along every day.
100%.
Now, that doesn't mean that the CEO job isn't significant. It is, because I've got responsibilities that our cleaner doesn't have, okay, to governments, and in fact, to lots of governments, as well as to all of the staff and our donors and so on. So I don't mean it's flat and equal, but I do mean that CEOs need to get off the pedestal. And in fact, one thing that I admire in some people who I know or I know of are people who've been a CEO and then resign from that position and take up a different job in the organization. And I actually think that is probably my future as well. To let someone else take my job, somebody else who would like to do that, and for me to maybe specialize somewhere else. It's hard to do that in one way because there is an ego, of course, and can a CEO watch a replacement doing things differently? And I actually think, yeah, I'd have no problem with that at all, as long as they're doing a good job of it. But even that, you know, even when I say as long as, and so it takes a lot of thought, and there'd have to be boundaries around it. But yeah, this glorification of the CEOs is not justified.
Yes.
Not at all.
Yes. And we've been talking for more than 1 hour, and I everything that you said, I definitely not make a mistake to bring you into one bowl of rice, because you just strongly demonstrate that from every way of your explanation. Well done to be. I hope you are okay for me to say that you are a grain of rice in the bowl of rice, because you are a humble leaders. Your explanation about your purpose is quite amazing. It's very amazing, because I can see the long-term vision of your purpose. All the activity, many times you mentioned that, you yourself are on the ground. And that's what I keep saying throughout my organization to many people that consult with me. Where you have an organization where the leaders are actually equally responsible, not only sitting in the pedestal, you have a successful cultured business.
Yeah, yeah, and sharing that responsibility. That's the other thing about being a CEO.
Yeah.
The CEO is a hard job if you think that like one person
Yes.
has all the responsibility. You know, I have 100 staff, more than 100 staff in Bluedragon. Why should I try to be the best all the time? Why would anyone think that's a good idea? I've got 100 bright people working with me. I need to rely on them, to ask them to help me, to step up, to take on jobs that they can do better than me. When you think of the CEO as the top job, you're actually kind of denigrating everyone else who is so capable. Yeah, that we need to be a lot more networked in our organizations than we are. And when you do that, when you say I'm not the leader on a pedestal, I'm going to work alongside, shoulder to shoulder, with my whole team, frontline staff, managers, accountants, cleaners, everyone. There's so much power in that. You're a much more powerful organization. And importantly, the CEO can leave and the organization can continue and be strong.
Fantastic. That is so applied for a lot of organization, because there is many leaders that only good when the leaders are there.
Yeah.
But then when when they move, the whole thing going down. And I disagree with that concept, because it means that the purpose is very individual. Because the right leaders, the purpose have to be continue with or without.
It's very dangerous, very dangerous. And I'm at risk of that, of course, as a founder and as a CEO. There is a lot that depends on me, and that's not ideal. And so I actually am working towards that system. And part of my approach there has been to introduce that co-CEO model. So it's very much that bowl of rice, not just this one grain, but a whole bowl. And we're not fully there. I'm certainly not preaching based on my mega success in doing this, but it's what I'm working towards. That anyone leaves and there's an impact, of course. But you can't be in that situation where one person leaves and the whole organization disintegrates. That's a real problem.
Okay. Now, we only have a few minutes to go, Michael, but I really want to ask these last questions. And after that, I will summarize. Can you, in the ideal world, if this is Michael world, right? In a very quarantine world where people focusing on your organization, can you share with us, how can we help you? How can the audience help you? What do you wish from us around the world? Because that's the least One Bowl of Rice can give, where we can share your organization intent. We can share your wish with the hope that one other bowl of rice out there will open their eyes and offering their help. Do you mind to share with us? How can we?
Well, look, thank you for asking. And as a charity, you're not going to be surprised that I say we need donations. Of course we do. That's our lifeblood that keeps us going. But what I want to go a little bit deeper than that, though. And I want to say, start where you are, do what you can. Now we have companies that partner with us, for example, some great companies like Intrepid in Australia, or APT Travel in Australia, Rolled, the food chain, the Vietnamese food chain. And each one of them comes to us looking at Bluedragon saying, what's our mission and vision? And how does that connect to Bluedragon? So straight away, the starting point there is not, let's write them a check. It's thinking, what's the connection? How can we do something together? Now, for mums and dads, or for individual people wanting to send money, maybe they actually do just want to send a donation and just get some feedback about that. We have a program called Dragon Wings, where we invite people to donate monthly. Some people send $5 a month, some people send $20, $50 a month, and then we update them all the time. Here's this story about something great that's happened because of you giving to Dragon Wings. With companies, they might want to look a lot more at how to align the vision and mission. But either way, whether it's a company or an individual person, you should be getting something back from your donation, more than the warm fuzzy. It might be you're learning something about the world. It might be you're increasing your staff engagement by having that connection with Dragon. Send me an email. Ask me to be an online speaker at your next staff meeting. Find ways to connect that actually give you something back. because then it's mutual. And when it's mutual, it's going to continue longer and be more impactful. We have relationships with schools, for example. And there are schools in Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, around the world. They raise money for us. They have activities. Then we zoom into their class, or we visit when we can, and we help that school community learn about these issues in Vietnam. We have on our website, we have a page of resources for school students and for teachers to use in the classroom. So we're always looking, how do we make this mutual? We do need donations. The more money we receive, the more people we can help. It's as simple as that. But we also want to give something back to you and to the community. You deserve it, and it's good for everyone if we do that.
Michael, thank you so much for donating your time. You know, the last 1 hour and a quarter, you know, we hear your story, your organization story. I've been tuning to your website in the last week or so, watching so many YouTubes around your initiative. So once again, to the audience, if you are interested further in the story of Bluedragon, please visit their website, www.bluedragon.org, to understand this great initiative that come from the co-CEO and the founder, Michael, and in creating an organization with a clear purpose of caring Vietnamese children and families in crisis. And they also have a vision to create a long-term change for the better world. You know, for the past 1 hour, I learned a lot of things. Obviously, we learned about your initiative and how brutal it can be for children in Southeast Asia. And we're only talking about one country so far. Imagine if you combine the whole world to it. We learn from you how to create a meaningful and purposeful organization where the team can be involved and sustainable. We learn from you. We have a conversation about what's the purpose and the role of a CEO of an organization, you know, and which is, I think, is very, very important. The way you describe that, you know, we need to carry instead of direct. We need to allow your team to be able to make a decision, because they are the front line that change the world of the people. And if we create a bureaucratic process, then we actually living in the area where no one can help anyone.
Exactly.
And then we also close with understanding that we can actually help you. Of course, as a charity, as a non-profit, you require donation, but organization can look at your organization in different things. Listening to you, I agree with you. You are a perfect teacher for leadership, because your experience will teach many leaders out there how to be a sustainable leaders that drive the business where uncertainty and crisis happen daily, emotional challenges. So leaders out there, if you want to learn from a bowl of rice type of leader, please get in contact with Michael. Michael video will be going into my bowl of rice website in the next couple of days. Michael, thank you for being the first video of my bowl of rice. This is a website. Yeah, this is a website that I created with the intent of sharing great stories, valuable leaders, so people out there can learn from each other. And I'm very thankful that you're putting your time for us.
Thank you, Gus. This has been a really pleasurable chat. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to lots more stories up on your website.
Thank you, Michael. You have a great day, and look forward to get more engagement. We will broadcast this. We will share your story because we believe in it. And once again, congratulations in saving children in Vietnam through bluedragon.org.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you.